Black woman's kindness puts her in danger. Rain poured down in sheets, turning the city into a blur of lights and shadows. Tina was locking up her small office when she heard it, hurried footsteps echoing in the alley behind her building. A man stumbled into view, soaked, out of breath, eyes darting like a hunted animal. Their gazes met. He looked terrified, but there was something else, desperation, almost a silent plea. Before Tina could react, the sound of police sirens sliced through the night. Red and blue lights flashed against the wet pavement as officers closed in from both ends of the street. The man pressed himself against the wall, staring at Tina as though her choice was his only chance. In that single moment, she faced a decision: walk away like everyone else would, or unlock the door behind her and let a stranger step inside. Her keys shook in her hand. Logic screamed no, but kindness whispered yes. Against every warning in her head, Tina cracked the door and stepped aside. The man slipped inside. His name was Hawk. That single act of mercy pulled Tina into a world of danger she never imagined. Because sometimes, one small kindness can change everything. Who exactly had she just invited into her life? A fugitive? Or the one man who could expose the truth? Every day, we drop stories you won't hear anywhere else. Don't miss the next one. Subscribe now, and stay with us. Let's now continue. The sirens didn't fade. They multiplied. The business district, usually silent after dark, now pulsed with flashing lights and restless engines. Hawk pressed himself tighter against the metal side of the delivery truck, every muscle wired, his ears catching every scrape of a boot on pavement. He wasn't outpacing them anymore. He was surrounded. Across the street, Tina hadn't moved. She should have walked away, turned the corner, and vanished into the night. Instead, she stood there with her phone buzzing in her pocket, unable to breathe as she watched this stranger glare at her like she was his last lifeline. "Help me," he had mouthed. 2 words that weighed more than the handcuffs waiting for him if she stayed silent. Her heels shifted against the sidewalk. Just a step forward, just a breath, and she knew her life might split in two. Hawk's hoodie clung to his shoulders like a second skin, wet with sweat and streaked with blood that wasn't his. His jaw clenched every time the flashlight beams came closer, bouncing off windows, slicing through the shadows. The officers scanned the alley like hunters. One of them barked into his radio. "Unit 4, sweep the east side. He's close. He's bleeding." Hawk's eyes darted back to Tina. He mouthed it again, slower this time. "Help. Me." Her heart iced. She knew the stakes. Once you step into someone else's chaos, you don't get to walk out clean. But the way he looked at her, there was something raw, almost human, in his desperation. Not the blank-eyed mask of a career criminal. Something else. The officers were closing in. Flashlight beams bounced across dumpsters, shattered glass. A broken fire escaped dripping rainwater from a storm hours ago. The glow came closer. Hawk bent lower, pressing his body flat to the truck's shadow, forcing his breath shallow. His left hand trembled against the concrete, the blood smeared across it glistening in the light. Tina's phone finally stopped buzzing. The silence left a ringing in her ears. She opened her mouth to shout, to tell them he was there, to end this, to get it over with. But nothing came out. Her voice stuck. Instead, she took one step into the street. It was small, but Hawk saw it. His eyes widened. Not relief, not gratitude. Something sharper. Fear. Warning. His lips barely moved, but she caught it. "Not here." A sharp whistle cut through the night. "There!" an officer shouted, and suddenly the flashlight swung, beams colliding in the gap between truck and wall. Hawk exploded from the shadows, legs pumping, a burst of energy from a body running on fumes. "Stop!" The first officer bolted after him, radio pressed to his mouth. The second drew his weapon but didn't fire, not yet, not with civilians nearby. Hawk vaulted a trash bin, his sneakers skidding across wet pavement. Tina's pulse spiked as he darted toward her side of the street. Toward her. She stumbled backward, almost tripping off the curb. Her briefcase slipped from her hand and crashed to the ground, spilling papers across the crosswalk. Hawk lunged forward, scooping the briefcase up with one hand like it was his own, shoving it back at her chest. "Walk," he hissed, not slowing down. "Now!" The officers were seconds behind, but that one word, walk, lodged in Tina's brain. She felt the weight of the briefcase in her arms, her fingers clenching around the leather she had carried for years without thinking. But now it wasn't hers anymore. He had touched it. He had passed something invisible onto her. Her legs obeyed before her mind caught up. She walked. Not fast, not running, just one step, then another, as Hawk disappeared into the alley behind her. The officers thundered past, chasing his shadow, not even noticing the woman drifting across the street like she belonged to none of this. But she did. Her heart pounded as she reached the corner. She wanted to stop, to breathe, to cry out that this wasn't her story, that she was just someone caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the briefcase in her hands said otherwise. The blood on its handle, his blood, said otherwise. At the far end of the alley, a sound cut through the chase. Not gunfire. Not a scream. Something heavier. A crash that made the ground tremble, followed by silence. The radios crackled. "Suspect down," one voice asked. Another answered, "No visual. He's gone." Gone. Tina froze at the corner. If he was gone, where did he go? And why did it feel like the weight of his escape now sat squarely in her arms, in the bloodied briefcase pressed to her chest? She swallowed hard, her throat dry. Hawk had run. The police were hunting. But in that split second, he'd passed her something. Not papers. Not evidence. Something worse. Choice. Because now she had to ask herself, if the police came back and searched her briefcase, what would they find? And if Hawk came back for it, what would he take from her in return? The sirens wailed again, closer this time, as more units poured into the district. Tina's reflection flickered across the glass wall of the office building behind her. Her own face stared back, pale, wide-eyed, holding the briefcase like a bomb. She had never felt more like a stranger to herself. And she whispered to the glass, barely audible even to her own ears, "What did I just do?" Tina isn't running, but she's already trapped. The question isn't whether Hawk will come back. The question is, what did he just make her part of? Please comment on your thoughts. Let's proceed. Morning light spilled over the glass towers of the business district, cold and bright, the kind that makes the city look clean even when it isn't. Tina sat at her desk, her blouse freshly pressed, her coffee untouched. The TV in the lobby was turned low, but the words reached her anyway. Police continue their manhunt for Adrian Hawk Rains. Her head jerked up. Hawk's face filled the screen, sharper, cleaner, younger than the sweat-soaked man she had seen hours before. The photo was corporate, a headshot cropped from some past event. The anchor's voice didn't waver. Rains, a former financial analyst, is accused of orchestrating a multimillion-dollar fraud scheme targeting investors connected to Fairmont Holdings. Authorities warn he is dangerous and may attempt to contact former colleagues. Fairmont Holdings. Her building. The place she walked into every morning, badge on her chest, and briefcase in hand. Her stomach turned. The bloodied grip of her briefcase flashed back in her mind. Her co-workers leaned closer to the TV. Some shook their heads, muttering. "Figures," one said. "He was too slick." Another, "You don't cross people like that and live to tell." Tina's palms went damp. She didn't move, didn't speak, and just listened as the words washed over her. Betrayed investors, siphoned millions, vanished with sensitive data. But he hadn't vanished. He had stood across the street from her, begging for help. And somehow, in 1 second of hesitation, she had given it. By noon, whispers had spread through the office like wildfire. Hawk was the subject of every conversation in the break room. His name clung to the glass walls, his face repeated in every news update. Some called him a genius gone badly. Others, a criminal who finally got what he deserved. None of them knew he had crossed Tina's path. None of them knew the faint trace of blood still smudged on the underside of her briefcase handle. But someone did. Tina noticed it first in the parking lot, an unfamiliar sedan idling too long, 2 men inside pretending not to watch. Later, near the elevators, 2 others in orange safety vests checked panels that didn't need fixing. Their eyes flicked too quickly, their movements rehearsed. She pressed her lips tight and told herself she was imagining it, that her brain was wired from the shock. But the longer she looked, the more she saw the cracks. By evening, her phone buzzed again. A number she didn't know. Her instinct screamed to ignore it. She let it ring twice, 3 times, but curiosity overruled. She swiped to answer. Tina. Her breath caught. His voice was lower now, ragged, but unmistakable. You shouldn't be calling me, she whispered, retreating into an empty stairwell. I didn't choose you. His words came fast, clipped, like every second risked his life. You saw me. That's why I had to use you. Her grip on the phone tightened. You're on the news. They're saying you stole millions. They're saying you ran. That's what they want you to believe. His voice cracked, the first crack she had heard through his controlled edge. I uncovered something. Files that prove Fairmont isn't just laundering money, they're moving funds offshore for people with power you can't imagine. I was supposed to disappear quietly. Instead, I ran. Her throat went dry. Images rushed back, men in vests, cars waiting, eyes tracking her. Then why the blood? Why the police? I was set up. They planted it all. Do you really think I'd be out here, running on foot, if I had millions stashed away? Do you think I'd beg a stranger to help me? She had no answer. Listen carefully. You are being watched. The line crackled. They think I gave you something. That's why those cars are there. They'll squeeze you until you break, because they can't let the truth surface. I need you to trust me. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Every word pulled her deeper into a current she hadn't chosen. Trust you, she whispered. You're a fugitive. I'm alive because I didn't trust anyone else. Static hissed. Then his voice returned, softer now. I know you didn't ask for this. But if you stay quiet, if you keep your head down, you'll be fine. If you don't. He let the words hang. They'll erase you too. The line went dead. Tina lowered the phone slowly. Her reflection stared back at her in the stairwell window, pale and wide-eyed, caught between fear and disbelief. Her co-workers upstairs laughed at memes, shared updates, and traded gossip about the man they thought they knew. But she was the only one carrying his voice, his warning. Was he a fraud who tricked everyone, including her? Or was he the only one telling the truth in a city where truth was a currency too expensive to spend? Her hands trembled as she clutched the phone to her chest. She had one choice left to make. Should she believe the man every headline called a criminal, or trust her own instincts, knowing they might destroy her? If Tina chooses wrong, she isn't just risking her job. She's risking her life. What will you do if you are in her shoes? Let's have it in the comments section. The cafe was almost empty, its lights dimmed, the hum of the fridge the only sound besides the rain tapping against the windows. Tina sat at a corner table, her coat draped across her lap like a shield. Her eyes kept drifting to the door, to the street outside where headlights streaked across wet asphalt. Every instinct told her to leave, to go home, shut the blinds, and forget the man who had dragged her into this. But she stayed. Hawk slipped in quietly, hood pulled low, his shoulders hunched like every movement hurt. He scanned the room in one sweep, then slid into the chair across from her. He smelled faintly of smoke and iron, like he hadn't had the luxury of washing since the night he ran. "You came," he said. Her voice was low. "You didn't leave me much choice." He reached into his jacket and placed a small black flash drive on the table between them. "This is why they want me gone." She stared at it. A tiny piece of plastic and metal, so ordinary it looked harmless. "I was an internal auditor at Fairmont," he said, his words clipped but sharp. "Routine checks, nothing unusual, until I stumbled on numbers that didn't add up. Transfers hidden through shell accounts. Funds routed offshore. At first, I thought it was corporate theft. But it was bigger. It involved government contracts, police pensions, and even election funds. Billions disappearing, and everyone taking a cut." Tina's stomach twisted. "That sounds impossible." He leaned closer. "Impossible until you see the files. This drive has enough to take them all down. Names, dates, accounts, wire trails. If it goes public, half the city collapses." Her throat went dry. "So you ran with it." "I had to. Once they realized I knew, I stopped being an auditor. I became a liability." His eyes burned into hers. "And liabilities get buried." Tina reached for the drive, then stopped. "Why show me this?" "Because you already crossed the line. You lied for me. That makes you part of this whether you want it or not. And if they think you have the drive, you're already marked." Her hand trembled above the table. She wanted to push it back toward him, to walk away, but her body refused to move. Then the sound came. Tires screeching outside. A car door slamming. Hawk's eyes shot to the window. A black SUV had pulled up, its engine still running, tinted windows reflecting the neon cafe sign. "Too late," he whispered. The door burst open. Men in dark jackets swept in, their movements sharp, professional. No badges, no hesitation. One of them shouted, "There!" Hawk grabbed the flash drive and shoved it into Tina's hand. "Kitchen. Now." They bolted from the table. Chairs clattered, cups shattered. Tina's breath came ragged as Hawk yanked her through the narrow hallway into the back kitchen. Steam clouded the air from the dishwasher, the floor slick with water. "Out the back!" Hawk hissed, shoving open the rear door. The alley was slick with rain, dumpsters casting long shadows. Their shoes slapped the ground as they ran, the echo of boots following close behind. Bullets cracked the night. Tina ducked instinctively, her ears ringing. Hawk pulled her against the wall, shielding her as fragments of brick sprayed over them. "Keep moving," he barked. They dashed toward the far end of the alley, lungs burning. Another SUV blocked the exit. Men spilled out, guns raised. Hawk dragged Tina sideways into a narrow gap between buildings. They pressed themselves flat against the wet brick as the men swept past, their radios crackling. Tina's chest heaved. Her whole body screamed to stop, to give up, to let them take him. But the flash drive burned in her palm, and she couldn't open her fingers. Hawk leaned close, his voice barely audible. "Now you see. This isn't the police. This isn't about justice. These are hired cleaners. They wipe out problems. And tonight, that includes you." Her breath caught. She had been a bystander hours ago, a woman finishing late at the office. Now, She was a fugitive beside a man whose truth or lies could kill them both. She finally spoke, her voice shaking. "Then what do we do?" He looked at her like there was only one answer. "We don't get caught." They slipped deeper into the maze of side streets, rain hiding their tracks. Every corner felt watched, every shadow too thick. Tina clutched her coat tight, her mind replaying the gunshots, the blank stares of the men who had stormed the cafe. Her world, the predictable 9-to-5 grind, the elevator rides, the coffee breaks, was gone. In its place was a nightmare city where she was hunted for reasons she barely understood. But the flash drive was real. And if Hawk's files were as damning as he claimed, then the people chasing them weren't stopping until both of them were silenced. Now this question is, what if? Hawk's story is true. The corruption isn't just deep, it's everywhere. But if he's lying, Tina is holding the evidence that makes her the perfect scapegoat. The question that haunts her now: who, if anyone, can they trust? The rain hadn't stopped. It fell harder now, hammering against rooftops, pooling on sidewalks, drowning out the sound of their footsteps as Tina and Hawk pushed deeper into the city's industrial district. The office towers were far behind them. Now it was warehouses, shuttered shops, rusted fences. Tina's body screamed for rest, but Hawk never slowed. He moved with purpose, his head snapping side to side, eyes tracking every alley and parked car. He looked like a man who had run his whole life. They ducked beneath a corrugated overhang, both gasping for breath. Hawk leaned against the wall, dripping rainwater, his hoodie plastered to his skin. Tina tried to steady her shaking hands. "You can't keep doing this," she hissed. "Running street to street, waiting to be shot. What's the plan? Where does this end?" Hawk's jaw clenched. "It ends when the files go public. When the people chasing us can't bury it anymore." She held up the flash drive. "You're putting everything on this. But you still haven't told me why you trust me with it." "Why me?" For the first time, Hawk hesitated. His gaze slid away. Before she could press, her phone vibrated. She froze. She hadn't touched it since the cafe. Slowly, she pulled it from her coat pocket. The screen was black, then suddenly lit with a string of garbled text, letters, and numbers spilling across the display, vanishing as quickly as they appeared. "What is this?" she whispered. Hawk snatched the phone, his face darkening. "They're inside. Your phone's compromised. Every call, every message, monitored." He tossed it into a puddle and stomped it under his heel. From now on, no devices. Her heart raced. "You mean they've been watching me this whole time?" "They don't need to watch. They need to know where to find you. And now they know." As if on cue, headlights swept across the alley. A sedan slowed near the corner, its windows tinted. Tina pressed back against the wall, pulse pounding. Hawk gripped her arm. "Move!" They darted into another passage, weaving through dumpsters and chain-link gates. The car idled a moment, then rolled on. But Tina's fear was no longer just about the men hunting them. It was about the man beside her. "You're still not telling me everything," she said, her voice raw. "You act like a whistleblower, but the files, those kinds of transfers, those accounts, you don't just stumble on that. You had access. You were in on it." Hawk's steps faltered. For a second, silence hung heavy between them. Finally, he exhaled. "I was part of it. Not in the beginning, but I let things slide. I signed off on reports I knew were false. I told myself it was survival, that if I didn't play along, I'd lose everything. But when I saw where it was heading, the scale, the people tied to it, I tried to stop. That's when they turned on me." Tina's stomach dropped. "So you're not clean. You're not just some victim." "I'm not pretending I am. I've done things I regret. But the difference is, I want to burn it down now." Before she could respond, footsteps echoed behind them. Two men in police uniforms appeared at the far end of the alley. Flashlights cut through the rain. Tina's chest seized. "It's them." Hawk shook his head. "Not police. Look closer." The man's posture was wrong. Too rigid, too rehearsed. Their belts had holsters but no radios. Even their badges looked off. One of them called out, "Miss, are you all right? Step away from him." Tina's heart slammed against her ribs. Every survival instinct screamed to run toward the officers, to let them handle this. But Hawk grabbed her wrist, whispering fiercely, "They're not here to protect you. They're here to deliver you." The officers closed in, their flashlights steady, expressions flat. Tina's mind spun. What if Hawk was lying? What if he'd dragged her into a fantasy just to save himself? And what if these men were the real police, her last chance to get out before it was too late? The taller officer stopped a few feet away, his voice even. "Miss, we need you to come with us. You're not safe here." Hawk's grip on her wrist tightened. "Don't listen. Look at their shoes. Standard-issue police boots have steel toes. Those don't. They're not cops." Tina glanced down. Plain black boots. No shine, no markings. Her breath hitched. Suddenly, one of the officer's radios crackled, but it wasn't dispatch chatter. It was a man's voice, cold and direct. "Do not let the asset out of your sight." Asset. Her blood ran cold. Before she could react, Hawk shoved her sideways. "Run!" Gunfire ripped through the rain. Tina hit the ground, the flash drive skidding across wet concrete. Hawk lunged for it, returning fire with a pistol she hadn't seen him carrying. The alley erupted in chaos, bullets pinging off metal, rain soaking everything, and headlights sweeping the walls. Tina crawled toward the flash drive, her fingers inches from it, when a boot slammed down on top of it. She looked up. The taller fake officer stood over her, gun in hand, eyes flat. He bent slightly, voice calm. "You're making the wrong choice. He's not who you think he is." Her breath came in ragged gasps. "Then who is he?" The officer smiled faintly. "A man who's already traded your life once. You really think he won't do it again?" Tina's head spun. Hawk shouting in the background, gunfire echoing, the rain beating down, and this stranger claiming she was nothing more than a bargaining chip. And for the first time, she didn't know who to fear more, the men hunting them or the man who dragged her into their world. If Hawk has already betrayed someone before, what's stopping him from betraying Tina, too? And if the fake officers are right, is she protecting the wrong man, while destroying herself in the process? The air was heavy with fear and sweat. Hawk's name had exploded across the internet, and now every corner of the city felt like a trap. Tina scrolled through her phone, her stomach sinking as she read the posts. Addresses, blurry photos, 100 strangers shouting where he might be. Their safe room above the auto shop was no longer safe. The feed was a death sentence, flashing his face across screens that never slept. "Time's up," Hawk muttered, pulling on a faded hoodie. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled as he packed the small bag he always kept ready. Tina couldn't shake the thought. Someone wanted him found, and not by the law. They left under the cover of night, slipping through streets where neon lights reflected off puddles. Every sound pressed against their nerves, shoes scraping concrete, car doors slamming, a distant siren that never faded. Tina tried to steady her breathing. Hawk knew the city's hidden veins, leading her down service alleys and through locked gates he opened like second nature. He moved like a man who had spent years preparing for this moment. Their path ended at an old subway entrance, long sealed after the line shut down. Hawk broke the chain with a crowbar and gestured her inside. The air changed instantly, colder, dust clogging her throat. The tunnels stretched like veins under the city, littered with graffiti and rusted rails. It felt endless, an underground graveyard where every echo followed them like a predator. Tina whispered, "Do you know where this leads?" Hawk nodded. "To a maintenance exit near the river. If they're tracking us above, this is the only way out." But the deeper they went, the clearer it became. They weren't alone. Footsteps carried through the darkness. Not one set. Several. Flashlights bounced faintly against distant walls, cutting through the black like hunting dogs. Hawk froze, pulling Tina behind a pillar, hand covering her mouth. She felt his heartbeat against her shoulder, rapid but steady, like a man trying to stay in control while knowing death was close. "They're splitting up," Hawk whispered. "Some are cops. The others aren't." Tina's mind reeled. If even the police were down here, then the reach of this conspiracy was far wider than Hawk had told her. She wanted to ask questions, but the words died in her throat as a beam of light swept inches from their hiding place. They moved again, faster this time, weaving through service corridors. Hawk's breathing grew heavier, but his focus never broke. At one junction, he slowed and leaned against the wall. "There's something I should have told you earlier," he said, voice low, almost swallowed by the dripping pipes around them. "I wasn't just running for myself. I gave everything to a journalist months ago. She promised to publish it. Then she vanished. No trace, no explanation." Tina's chest grew cold. "So the files you're carrying, they aren't the only copy?" "They were her backup," Hawk admitted. His eyes, shadowed in the dim light, carried guilt she hadn't seen before. "But she's gone. And maybe it's my fault. If I'd gone public sooner, people wouldn't have disappeared. Maybe lives could have been spared." His words dug into her. She thought of the cars outside her office, the men pretending to fix cables, the fear that had already seeped into her own life. How many others had been swallowed because Hawk waited too long? The footsteps returned, closer now, the voices sharper. Tina gripped his arm. "We can argue later. Right now we move." They pushed deeper, the tunnels narrowing until they reached a rusted ladder leading upward. Hawk went first, wincing with every pull. Tina followed, praying the exit wasn't locked. When she pushed the hatch, it lifted with a groan of iron, revealing the night sky over the river. They crawled out into the open air, gasping as though they had been buried alive. Behind them, lights flared in the tunnel, shouts echoing up the ladder. Hawk slammed the hatch shut and shoved a steel bar across it, buying them seconds at most. The river smelled of oil and damp stone. Tina wanted to believe they were safe, but the city still stretched around them like a battlefield. Hawk looked at her, eyes burning with determination. "We're not done yet. If they catch us now, everything dies here." His words hung in the night, heavy and true, and Tina couldn't help but ask herself, would the truth die with them in the dark, or could they still turn the game around? The riverfront was silent, but silence in the city never lasted long. Hawk leaned against the stone embankment, clutching his side as if holding himself together. Tina noticed the blood darkening his hoodie and froze. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he said, pushing off the wall. His face told a different story. Pale, lips pressed tight, sweat shining under the dim streetlight. They couldn't stay there. Hawk pulled out a prepaid phone, dialing with shaky fingers. "There's a contact. She used to work with the journalist I told you about. If anyone can help, it's her." Tina wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. Every move seemed riskier than the last, and still Hawk never stopped leading them deeper into danger. The meeting was set for midnight, an old warehouse by the docks. Tina felt her pulse race as they walked there, the air heavy with salt and smoke from the water. The building looked abandoned, windows shattered, the inside glowing faintly from a single bulb. "This doesn't feel right," she whispered. Hawk nodded but pushed forward anyway. Inside, shadows stretched across cracked concrete floors. A woman stood near the center, tall, hood up, face barely visible. "You're late," she said. Hawk stepped closer. "Do you have the files?" That's when the first shot rang out. The woman dove aside as figures spilled from the shadows. Men with rifles, masks covering their faces. The bulb above shattered, plunging the room into chaos. Gunfire lit the space like lightning. Hawk shoved Tina behind a support beam, shielding her with his body. The impact was brutal, his shoulder jerking back as the bullet tore through him. He groaned but stayed upright, gripping her hand with surprising strength. "Run!" he hissed. But she didn't run. She dragged him down, forcing him into cover. The world around them was exploding with sound. Shouts, metal clanging, bullets ricocheting off walls. Tina pressed her hand to his wound, feeling the warmth spill across her palm. "Don't you dare leave me here with this," she whispered fiercely. Hawk coughed, blood at the corner of his mouth. His eyes, though dimming, stayed fixed on her. "Listen to me. You have the drive now. You're the only one who can finish this." Her stomach dropped. She hadn't noticed when he slipped it into her pocket. The weight of it was heavier than anything she had ever carried. "You can't put this on me," she said. "This was your fight." "It was," Hawk admitted, his voice ragged. "But I was part of it, too. I helped build those accounts. I made the numbers look clean. I told myself it was just business. By the time I understood what it cost, families ruined, money funding violence, it was too late. My silence made me complicit." The words cracked her chest open. Hawk wasn't just a whistleblower. He was one of them once. The man she had been risking her life for wasn't just hunted because of what he knew. He was hunted because of what he had done. Another volley of shots ripped through the air, shards of brick exploding near their heads. Tina flinched, pulling Hawk lower. Her heart thundered as reality set in. The flash drive was the only leverage left. If she tried to save him, she risked losing it. If she escaped with the drive, she'd leave him behind to die. Hawk's hand found hers again, weaker now. "I don't care what happens to me. Just don't let them bury the truth." Tina's mind spun. Every instinct screamed to protect herself, to run, to live. But another voice pressed harder. If she abandoned him, was she any different from the people who built their power on silence? The attackers regrouped at the far end of the warehouse, their voices carrying through the broken space. She knew they'd push forward soon, sweep the corners, and leave no survivors. Tina tightened her grip on the flash drive, her pulse hammering in her ears. Hawk was slipping, and so was her window to act. The night offered no mercy, only a choice that could not be undone. And as she stared at him, bleeding, broken, still begging her to fight, she wondered, was Hawk worth saving, or was the truth bigger than both of them? The warehouse stank of gunpowder and rust. Tina's ears rang from the last burst of gunfire, but she forced herself to move. Hawk was barely conscious, his breath shallow, his hand slipping from hers. The flash drive in her pocket pulsed in her mind like a live grenade. If they died here, everything would vanish with them. She needed a way to force the truth into the open. Through the cracks of the warehouse wall, she saw headlights sweeping across the docks. More cars arriving, more men stepping out. They were outnumbered, and there was no way to fight their way through. But she still had her phone. She pulled it out with trembling fingers, holding the camera up. Hawk's eyes fluttered open as he saw the glow of the screen. "What are you doing?" he rasped. "What you should have done," Tina shot back. "If they're going to kill us, the world's going to watch them try." She opened a live stream, hit "Go live," and pointed the camera at the flash drive in her hand. The screen filled with names, numbers, accounts, the files exploding into real time as she dragged them open. For a moment, the attackers didn't understand. But then one of them shouted, and the room erupted again. Bullets splintered wood around her as Tina ducked, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Viewers began to join. Dozens, then hundreds. The comments rolled in fast. "What is this? Is this real?" Someone typed, "That's my company on the list." Another, "These are city officials." Her heart pounded as the numbers climbed. Thousands now. The world was watching. Outside, sirens wailed. Police cars screeched to a halt near the docks, but none of the officers moved in. They stood back, confused, eyes flicking to their radios as the live stream spread. Inside, Hawk dragged himself up, his blood staining the floor. "Keep going," he muttered. His voice was a whisper, but there was fire in his eyes. Now they can't bury it. The masked men hesitated. One of them lunged forward, but another grabbed his arm. "It's live," he growled. "If they kill her now, it's over." Tina's hands shook, but she forced herself to scroll through the files, reading names out loud. CEOs, politicians, judges. The list went on, each revelation sharper than the last. The live stream counter hit tens of thousands. Comments flooded. "We need answers. This is the evidence they tried to hide. Don't stop streaming." She glanced at Hawk. His face was pale, his lips blue, but he nodded. "This is it. Finish it." Then the phone buzzed, a call cutting through the feed. She nearly dropped it. The caller ID flashed unknown. Against her better judgment, she answered on speaker. A voice, calm and steady, filled the room. "End the stream. Walk outside. This can all disappear for you. Money, safety, a new life." Tina's throat went dry. They were watching, even now, reaching directly into her hand. Hawk shook his head, but his strength was fading. The voice continued, "If you don't, you'll die with him, and no one will remember your name." Her viewers were listening. The comments exploded. "Don't stop. They're trying to shut you up. Keep going." Her pulse hammered. She thought of her office, her co-workers whispering about Hawk. She thought of her family, who had no idea where she was tonight. She thought of the moment she had lied to the police and realized she couldn't take it back. And then she raised the phone higher, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "The world deserves the truth. You want me silent? You'll have to take this phone out of my cold hands." The live stream counter soared past 100,000. Outside, the crowd grew. People were arriving, drawn by the broadcast. Chants echoed from the docks, voices demanding answers. The police line faltered, unsure whether to advance or retreat. The masked men inside the warehouse stepped back, their plan collapsing under the weight of exposure. Hawk's breathing slowed, but his smile was faint and real. "They can't stop it now," he whispered. But Tina knew better. The files were out, but the people behind them weren't gone. Power never gave up easily. Even with the truth exposed, the question lingered, sharp and unshakable. Would those in control find a way to crush them anyway? The live stream ended only when Tina's battery gave out, the screen going black in her blood-stained hands. The warehouse was silent except for Hawk's shallow breathing. Outside, the chants from the crowd carried across the water like thunder. Moments later, the police finally pushed in. They weren't the same officers who had cornered Hawk days ago. These men came cautiously, weapons lowered, their radios buzzing with orders from above. They couldn't ignore what millions had just witnessed online. 2 paramedics rushed to Hawk, lifting him onto a stretcher. He groaned but was still alive. Tina tried to follow, but one officer blocked her path, eyes sharp with suspicion. "Stay where you are. You're coming with us too." Her chest went cold. After everything, was she about to be arrested alongside him? But then another officer stepped in, holding up his radio. Orders changed. She walks. The higher-ups don't want to be seen silencing her. Not now. The message was clear. She wasn't free. She was useful. They couldn't touch her while the world's eyes were fixed on the case. As Hawk was wheeled into the ambulance, he reached out a trembling hand. She caught it, leaning close enough to hear his fading words. "The truth is only safe if someone carries it forward." Then the doors shut, and the ambulance roared into the night. The following morning, the city felt different. Newspapers printed names that had been hidden for years. Offices buzzed with rumors. Politicians scrambled to issue statements, each one insisting they had no part in the scandal. Arrests began, but only at the lower levels: accountants, small managers, mid-tier executives. The bigger names stayed quiet, untouched for now. Tina walked back into her building, every eye on her. Whispers filled the halls, but not about Hawk anymore. This time, they were about her, the woman who stood in front of thousands and forced the truth into the open. At her desk, she replayed the live stream in her mind. Hawk bleeding out beside her, his voice urging her on. The flood of comments cheering her forward. The voice on the phone offering her safety in exchange for silence. She had chosen the harder path, but now the weight of that choice pressed down heavy. One colleague approached her cautiously. "Was it worth it?" he asked. "You put yourself in the middle of something you can't control. They'll come after you now." She didn't answer. Instead, she glanced at her computer screen. Emails had already begun flooding her inbox. Journalists asking for interviews, strangers calling her brave, others warning her to watch her back. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "It's not over. We're still here." Her stomach sank. She had known this moment would come. Exposing the truth wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of another fight. Still, she couldn't go back. She thought of Hawk's hand gripping hers, of the files spilling across the world in real time. She thought of the fear in the men's eyes when they realized the live stream had ruined their silence. She whispered to herself, steady and certain, "Survival isn't about hiding. It's about forcing them to face what they've done." At her desk, surrounded by the noise of an office pretending everything was normal, she opened a blank document and began typing. Her own account, her own evidence, her story. Because she knew the corruption wouldn't die quietly. It would adapt, shift, and find new masks. But she also knew something else. The people had seen too much to pretend anymore. The seed had been planted. And if no one else carried it forward, she would. The city outside her window buzzed with traffic, sirens, and voices. Somewhere in that chaos, Hawk lay in a hospital bed, alive but caged by the same system he had exposed. Somewhere else, powerful men sat in dark rooms, planning their next move. And here, at a simple desk in the heart of the business district, Tina made her choice. She wouldn't run. She wouldn't hide. She would keep the light on them until it burned. Because sometimes survival isn't about running from the law. It's about forcing the law to face itself. Tell us where you're watching from, please, subscribe for more powerful stories, and stay tuned because tomorrow we'll drop another story you won't want to miss. Your support helps us keep bringing you these stories.